I have played a lot of TCGs over the years, and while I don't play all of them because that would involve way too much effort and money, there is still a group of games that I really like. But nothing is perfect, and it's healthy to recognize the flaws in things and accept them the way that they are, so I'm going to rip into my favourite TCGs and talk about the reasons why I hate them. And just as a side note, I won't be explaining any of the rules of these card games unless it's needed to further my point. And just keep in mind that this is my opinion and nothing but my opinion, and just because I stated my opinion doesn't mean my opinion is fact. While I'm sure we're all very mature adults about this, I know there are certain groups of you who will gladly remove my spleen because I stated a negative opinion about your favourite card game. On that note, the first parasite I've attached to my wallet is Yu-Gi-Oh! The problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is how you win. You could argue that it is the very crux of any and every game that you play. However, every good game acknowledges a critical detail. The more you can play said game, the more fun you'll have. Take a game like Slay the Spire the board game. If you go down, you're never out for too long. You do your turns in tandem with your teammates, you discuss synergies. Compare that to Monopoly, where you have to wait for everyone else to take their turn and make decisions, and if you lose, you have a full 2 hours to kill in the cook chair while everyone plays without you. Of course, add an extra hour on for everyone who gets analysis paralysis. Out of both of these games, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is Monopoly. Cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Do a lot, more than basically every other card game combined, and the majority of decks have no issue with summoning a monster with attack the size of your country's GDP and bankrupting your life points. The most optimal way of winning the game is ensuring they don't play the game. It feels like every other week there's a new FTK or Unbreakable Board combo that just makes the game unbelievably frustrating because now you just have an answer for every card in my hand, or I don't even get to play any cards in my hand. Years back when the danger cards were running wild at my locals, my opponent was running an FTK deck. Considering I was talking about danger monsters, I don't think I need to specify that. I can officially say I have stolen part of your life. He went first, played a few cards, and with no interaction in my hand, I simply put my hand down and said, "Do your combo, I'm going to go get a drink." And by the time I got back, he was still going. Hey guys, it's me. Welcome back to my playthrough of Windows Solitaire. Today I'm going to be killing a man. This is the reason why I stepped away from the game for so long and still don't touch the competitive scene, because it was just driving me mad. And because these board states are incomprehensible. Congratulations to Konami for creating the world's first non-Euclidean TCG. I know people find this fun, but I'm not people. At least that's what the church tells me. I think it's a bad thing that my ability to play the game hinges on me drawing feet pics. Who okayed this idea? Speaking of Yu-Gi-Oh!, its younger brother Rush is objectively better, and you can disagree, if you like being wrong. Rush fixes many of the issues with the last game, such as being too slow, being too fast, and the concept of a ritual monster, but all of this is at the expense of the game's own mechanics being actually usable. I am a simple person. I like to hit things really hard, and given the opportunity to do that with a giant fuck-off monster that takes up the majority of my board space, I will take that with a firm handshake and an awkward hug. Maximum mode monsters do exactly this, allowing you to destroy everything you know and love in favour of an excessively sized beatstick that is about as effective as something you could have just summoned anyway. Barring the winged dominatrix deck, maximum mode monsters aren't usually used in the majority of decks on account of them being walled by the cum shake, and should your subpar Exodia Explodia, you will be left defenseless and beaten to death for the crime of not learning your lesson the first time Konami tried to pull this nonsense. Why these things don't have piercing or multiple attacks in the first place is beyond me. When my opponent summons the embodiment of Beelzebub himself, I want to feel emotions such as fear, tension, perhaps concern, rather than shrugging it off and summoning an infant who is also a strawberry to infringe on my opponent's right to freedom of religion. Just make these fuckers stronger. And stop printing so many anime women. That's enough dragging Konami. So let's drag Blizzard instead. Hearthstone is not only a TCG, it's also a slot machine. The first mistake you make when playing Hearthstone is believing that you have any form of agency whatsoever. Back in the early days of Hearthstone, cards would buff minions, draw cards, deal some damage. Now they randomly generate every card in the entire game. To put it simply, in modern Hearthstone you have to be prepared for anything and everything to go wrong. Let's say, hypothetically, your opponent were to randomly generate a minion, and that card just so happened to be an elder deity from the dawn of creation. Upon playing this minion, he spins a roulette wheel which randomly selects one of 6 different effects to activate, and it just so happens to land on Fireball Roulette. You are now forced to watch as the game randomly slings pyroblasts at anything and everything on screen until someone dies, and whether you win or lose, you can do it safely in the knowledge that this was all predetermined from the very beginning. You were already dead 3 minutes ago, you were just held here and forced to watch it happen. Should things go well, Hearthstone can be a really good time, but in some cases your opponent generates so much value in a single turn that you begin to wonder why you don't just play Battlegrounds. And then you realise that's worse. Lorcana is Disney's crack at cardboard crack, and it's not bad. I dare to say that it's good, or perhaps even enjoyable. It's a relatable card game because I also fear interaction with other people. In Lorcana, there are no quick effects, no trap cards, barely any interaction between you and your opponent. If you so desired, you and your opponent could go a whole game without once touching another player's card. I think that's a problem considering TCGs are meant to be a social thing, whatever that means. If you wanted to get your hands on your opponent's cards, then you could do so by challenging your opponents or using card effects. Just don't think you can do any of that on your opponent's turn. Sharing is caring, and this game doesn't care. There is no way to do anything on your opponent's turn, and if you can't make someone hate you just a little bit, then what's the point in playing a tabletop game? But Banunkie, I hear you say from inside your walls, you said that Yu-Gi-Oh has too much interaction, and now you're saying that Lorcana doesn't have enough? Interaction is like eating asbestos. You should do it all the time, but you'll probably have to do it at some point whether you like it or not. And in all honesty, after most of the TCGs I've played, I've got a slight craving for the ceiling candy floss. That is to say, I want to interact with my opponent. Altered is one of my most favourite games, and because of that you may think it would be difficult for me to pick out something bad about it. That would be correct if faction swaps weren't a thing. Motherfuckers turn my cards bisexual. I want you to imagine that you buy a new booster box, open a pack, perhaps 36, and get the exact cards you want in the wrong faction, thereby making them completely unusable with no way to remedy this. I opened 4 Bliss Basis, one of the best cards Lyra had to offer on account of it being a 3 mana 5 in all stats, which is marginally strong. Trouble was, 3 of these fish-playing bastards were Ysmir, making them completely fucking useless. Of course, there is an option to use the translation rules, where as long as you have an official copy of the card that you want to use, then you are more than free to use the wrong version. It would be nice if there was a way to get alternate and shinier versions of these cards you want through means that don't involve randomly getting them out of packs. Shame we don't have that technology. Much like my friends, until these vanish forever, I will forever be annoyed by their presence. Ashes Reborn is a stupid game for smart people, which needless to say means I'm really bad at it. Much like Altered, you have multiple turns per round and keep playing until both players can't make a move. I like this because it means both people get to play the game. In most cases anyway. You see, rather than using a mana resource that's readily available, such as cards or counters, your mana is random. Your mana is determined by rolls of a dice, with 3 faces being lower tier mana, 2 faces being middle tier mana, and 1 face being higher tier mana. Any of the higher tier stuff can be used for anything below it, but not the other way around. Yes, this does mean if you roll bad, you are going to be suffering a lot, and very slowly. Luckily, the gay devs accounted for this by allowing you to engage in meditation. And much like real meditation, it wastes your time for very little gain unless you do it a lot. When you enter the Zen Zone 0, you can convert one of your mana to any other symbol on the dice. The only issue with this mechanic is that you have to delete one of the cards from your deck, hand, or field from the game. There is no way to get these cards back. So you can imagine my frustration when on top of sitting quietly and thinking myself to death, my opponent also happens to be playing Leo Sunshadow, whose sole purpose is to seduce you into meditating so fast that you don't even get the benefits of it. Buddhist monks wish they could meditate like this. Gotta get that new PB on my enlightenment speedrun. In Ashes Reborn, information is very useful, so having to use the meditate mechanic on your first turn gives your opponent the go-ahead to start dunking on you and your deck more intensely than a waterboarding session. Hang on, give me a second, I think there's some good mana down there. Let me go take another look. Ashes Reborn is, quite frankly, a great game, until you roll wrong. Then it just becomes mental warfare. Finally, Chaotic, the real-life gacha game. When you open a monster from a pack, its stats are random, its health is random, and what makes it worse is in a lot of cases, this fucking matters. If you wanted to build a deck around Van Blute, then you have 2 options. Gambling or remortgaging your house. And do you think your favourite TCG's economy is unhealthy? While Yu-Gi-Oh has the issue of high rarity cards going for obscene prices, Chaotic has the issue that any and every monster could go for the same price, if not higher. For you see, some attacks depend on your creature's stats in order to do literally anything. So if you hypothetically had a minimum stat creature, that card would make half of the ways that you deal damage completely irrelevant. In this situation, you could imagine how valuable it would be to have maximum stats. And so could everyone else. You need a minimum of 6 monsters in most formats, though sometimes this can go up to 10, with each card costing around £250. And that's for the non-meta relevant cards. There is of course an option to go free to play if you happen to live anywhere that doesn't have a blatantly incompetent British man as their leader, because if you do, Chaotic Recode looks like this. Clearly the UK government has stocks in second-hand Chaotic cards. Motherfuckers blocked my card game, better start storing the images on E621. Despite my grievances, I love all of these TCGs. These are what I consider to be the best of the best, despite the toll they take on my credit score. How are you still £5,000 in debt? Please, just a few more packs, I'll make it all back, I swear. And just a reminder, these are all my opinions. You may like spending upwards of £1,000 on shiny cardboard, and I'm not going to ruin that for you. Just please be nice to me in the comments.